this whole thing with India is so complex. Like, and India is going to be a very important actor, regardless of what form that takes in international relations going forward. But we cannot forget that to be strong abroad, the United States first must be strong at home. And part of that is state governments. Today, we had a conversation with a man who is running for governor, but not with one of the major parties. His name's Mark Tippetts. He's running as gubernatorial candidate for the Libertarian Party. We just had a town hall with him, and we had a lot of interesting conversation. And his views, whether you agree with them or not, are, as you might expect from a third-party candidate, definitely unconventional. He presents an alternative to the status quo that we've known for so long, the two-party system. Yes, very interesting. Yeah. And I agree with a lot of it. Not all of it, mind you, not all of it. And some of the disadvantages of his platform are definitely things that we do want to get into during the course of this podcast. But there was enough that I agreed with where I definitely say that overall, at least in my opinion, maybe not like the polls, because obviously Libertarians don't really do well in the polls. They don't really win the elections. But like in my opinion, like from my perspective, he's a strong candidate. Like I like a lot of things he stood for, even if not all of them. So we want to talk about sort of Mark Tippetts, what Mark Tippetts stands for, and do we think would this be a good guy to have as governor of Texas?
First, we need to talk about the massive success that the Wisdom Factor Literary Society just had tonight, right? Guys, that was a hell of an event.
We had a gubernatorial candidate talk to us.
Not only that, but the way that we did it, and the way that we sort of extracted as much information as we could from him, and the way that the voter was able to interact with the political process was in a way that was unprecedented. This was like, it's just a shame that we didn't have as many people as we wanted to be there, because everyone who was there just felt like no one left early. No one left early. Everyone stayed to the very end.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sad that this group wasn't formed I'm kind of sad that this group didn't form during my freshman year, because man, I'd be enjoying this the entire time.
Yeah,
I'm still enjoying it.
It's funny because we're doing something that's intellectually stimulating, but it's fun.
Yep.
But anyway, so I don't want that to get lost on anybody. Sort of like what we did today and how amazing it was. That being said, it's not about none of that. At the end of the day, it's peel off all the fun stuff. It's about Mark Tippetts. It was about the Libertarian Platform. It was about his specific policies that he believes are going to shape Texas and make it as best as it can possibly be. And Preston and Nicholas, there was a lot of things that I felt he left to be desired. But there were some things that I thought that he did a very good job on. And for me, I just want to let everyone out there know that from the Wisdom Factory, which you can believe, okay? You can believe when the Wisdom Factory gives you information, it's real news. We're not giving you fake news because we don't have any interest. We don't have any moneyed interest. We're just telling you how we feel. Yeah. And we can hold on, let me say this. And I can tell you guys right now, regardless of his politics, Mark Tippetts has integrity, and Mark Tippetts cares about human life.
I can vouch for that.
Mark Tippetts was one of the, I would say, maybe not the first time, but definitely one of the first times where I've met a politician and I honestly felt like that they actually care. There are so many politicians that I've met that I actually wonder, do they really believe what they're saying?
Like when I met Jason Isaac, it was like, he doesn't give a damn.
I remember you saying about Jason Isaac, and I'm not sure if this is like the exact quote, but you said something to the effect of, I'm not even sure if he believes what he's saying, and that's a common thing. Democrats and Republicans and independents. There's a lot of politicians like that. But Mark Tippetts wasn't like that. When I talked to Mark Tippetts, whether it be on an issue that I agreed with him or an issue that I disagreed with him, the one thing that was consistent across the board is that he actually believed in it. Yep. That he actually felt he was doing what he was doing because he felt that it was the best option for Texas, and that he was doing it because he felt like it would benefit the people. And that, and that's the thing is that I walked away from it because keep in mind the Wisdom Factory, we're nonpartisan, we're not allowed to endorse any particular candidate
because we're multi-partisan.
But considering the alternatives, especially, After that event, dude, I liked Mark Tippetts. I like him. I'm
like him
seriously
too.
I'm probably gonna vote for him. I can't guarantee. Maybe I won't. I might change my mind. I might vote for Valdez, but I'm leaning heavily towards voting for Mark Tippetts. I like him, and I think he's in the race for the right reasons. Even though I have some pretty big problems with the stance on education, which we can get into. Like there are certain issues where I disagree with him.
One of the craziest things, Preston, is he admitted during the questioning period that just because he has a stance doesn't mean that it's going to be implemented politically. I've never heard a politician.
Yeah, and that's actually one.
That is
and also
pragmatic.
the thing is that he was willing.
He was like, look, I believe that this, and this, and this. But guys, when I'm in office, I don't have the political.
Well, one of the things I like about Mark, just one of the things I like about Mark Tippetts is that he's open. He's
pragmatic.
He's pragmatic, and he's open to working with the people. So what happened was that when I was asking him questions, I tried to do a mixture of hardball and softball. Like I asked him some questions that I knew were favorable to the Libertarian platform and that he would be able to answer easily. I also asked him some questions that I knew were going to be tough and that he might not be able to answer easily. But one of the questions that was tough was about education. I was asking him about inequality. And Mark Tippetts, here's what he said. He was like, I don't know. I'm open to suggestions.
Which is surprising.
And here's the thing. I admire that a lot. Some people might not like that because he's like, oh, I'm not answering the question or whatever. But for him, I like why? Because he was talking about, it's like, look, I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, that's
the fact
you don't hear.
that he's willing to listen to other opinions and work with the people to get things done, that is important. We need more leaders like that.
That's absolutely. So let me go on the other side of that, Preston, because I got to challenge you on that. A politician is supposed to have a vision for America. A politician is supposed to tell you this is how it's going to be. This is how your life is going to be better, and this is how we're going to get there. He's not supposed to get there and say, okay, well, this is how it's supposed to be, but I have no damn idea how we're going to get there.
Well, here's the thing.
This guy literally stood up there and said, look, I'm not the kind of guy that has the policy options. I'm not the kind of guy that can tell you what steps we need to take. I'm just the kind of guy that to tell you that there's a problem.
Well, first of all, in most instances, so that was only on one issue. In most instances, he did have a vision. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that, like we mentioned earlier, that he was being pragmatic. Is that no one person is going to know everything, even though he had clear policy solutions to some issues. That it's not realistic for one person to know everything, and it's better for a politician to be honest than it is for a politician to say they can fix everything that they can.
Well, no. What example are you talking about where it's the only example of where he said this?
So one of the things, like for example, I'll go right to the education thing.
So he didn't.
Listen. Even though he didn't address that aspect of education specifically,
yes,
there were other specific policies that he talked about. Like, for example, when he was comparing our education system to some of the online alternatives, when he was talking about how our education system needs to be updated to the modern workforce and to the modern environment, that he took enough concrete stances where I'm willing to acknowledge that he's not just a BS candidate and that he is willing to actually look at solutions rather than just problems. That what it is the fact that he was willing to take that stance on this one particular issue shows that he's more honest, and that if he doesn't know something, he's willing to admit it and work with people, work with voters, work with other people to try to actually get things done. And that that shows humility and good judgment.
It shows humility and it shows good judgment, and it also shows an inability to sort of have a good acumen when you're problem solving.
Well,
so hold on. So he said this, Preston. You said he only said this in one area. He said this in a lot of areas. It was in education where he said, well, I don't really know the fundamental problems in education. We should have the teachers and we should have the experts who do the research in that come figure out the problem. They've already done that. The research is already out there. The literature is already out there. If you're running for governor, you need to be up on that research. If you truly believe in that, Preston, you cannot tell me that we haven't looked at our educational system and our scholars haven't diagnose the main problems. We have. That's one. That's number one. Hold on. But first, let me finish. That's number one.
I do want to get into that.
So you cannot say that, well, we need to get these people to analyze. That was his big thing, analyze. Now, he did that on education. I don't give him a pass for that. B, he said that this whole cops with body cams issues and this whole idea that cops are going to perpetrate hateful crimes on innocent citizens because they are a different color or a different race, and he has no answer to stop that. He said that on that question too.
Yeah.
And third, I gave him an opening on, you're a libertarian, you believe in protecting rights. What rights do humans have? And he really couldn't give me any concrete right that, other than what's been in the amendments, other than what we've had since 40.
Yeah.
He couldn't give me anything on that.
Well,
it shows a lack of creativity. It shows a lack of problem solving. It shows a lack of action.
Well, I'd give him a pass on the third one just because the Ninth Amendment is inherently written to be a vague and ambiguous amendment. So no, I will. I'm about to get into that, but I'm just saying I'm not. That's why I say the third one and not the second and third. Because I think with the Ninth Amendment, that because the Ninth Amendment was written intentionally broad, that that expecting a specific answer, especially from somebody who actually believes in individual liberty, is not necessarily realistic. Now, on the body cams issue, I do definitely think that you have something there, and part of the reason for that is because of the fact that his answer was so dependent or so pro status quo, I guess you could say, that he was talking about how police officers, that if they are involved in this kind of stuff, that they're just going to lose their job. But we can clearly see that has not solved the problem. And you know what? I don't even think it's just because of body cams. I think it has a lot to do with accountability. That police officers, when they're either not going into the justice system or not getting appropriate sentences when they do this type of stuff. There are instances where a cop murders somebody, murders them in cold blood because they are black. That you have a black person that they are completely compliant. They are completely peaceful. They are not doing anything that suggests that they may attack the cop. They are not doing anything that suggests that they may actually be a criminal. All sorts of stuff like that. And they get shot. There was a video I saw where there was a guy, who once again happened to be African American, who was a therapist for a special needs child. They shot him. He was on the ground, and he was explaining how this special needs child who had been carrying around a dump truck, a toy dump truck that they thought was a gun, that how he had special needs and he didn't understand things, right? Now, that being said, body cameras are one solution. But I think the other solution, and this is easier said than done, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's a conversation we need to have. Holding police officers accountable when they commit crimes. When people commit murder, a lot of times they'll get, life in prison or 40 years in prison. Boom. Cops need to be getting that. If a cop goes and kills somebody in cold blood because of their race, they deserve the rest of their life in prison.
Hallelujah. And look, Preston has been able to come with a good answer that was better than anything that Mark Tippetts said. He actually has a solution. And something that Mark Tippetts didn't have any solutions on this particular.
Okay, there's something I need to add on.
But that's valid.
Y'all are right. There were some things that he had trouble answering, or rather didn't answer. Now, you got to understand, even if he did have all the answers, does that mean he would be able to implement them? No, he's running for governor. You have to deal with the state representatives and, if I'm not mistaken, the state senator.
That's a weak politician. A strong politician needs to get his vision implemented.
Well, even then, this is an independent candidate going against Republican and Democrat.
Well, you also got to remember the nature of his base. That libertarians don't like super strong government.
Yeah, that is true.
If he was running as a Republican or a Democrat, it would be very easy for him to get authoritarian to say that we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and any political opposition that stands in our way can go fuck themselves. But when he's a libertarian and he's running on a platform of individual liberty, he's running on a platform that the government, that unlike Republicans and unlike Democrats, he believes that the government should be constrained in what kind of policies that it can make.
He will still need to make compromises.
And when I say that, I mean Democrats and Republicans in the current context. I'm not saying that all Democrats and Republicans are inherently authoritarian, but what it is that recently we've seen a lot of people who actually end up in office are authoritarian, and that authoritarianism on both sides has become increasingly popular. Now, that being said, that when you have an authoritarian party like the 2018 Democratic Party or the 2018 Republican Party, it's easier for you to just say we're going to bulldoze anybody who stands in our way. But when you're a libertarian, the situation for Mark Tippetts is a lot similar to what the situation used to be for the main parties, that they were emphasizing individual liberty a lot more, and that Mark Tippetts is not so willing to just exercise this kind of fiat power because he's afraid of doing things that people don't want.
I don't mean it having silencing the opposition, having authoritarian power. What I mean is sort of having the ability to form, to have a bargain with the other interest to get
Yes.
to get what you want. That's what a politician has to do. I don't mean, you know what I mean? Like I didn't mean it as in, look, I'm Caesar, and if you oppose me, I'm going to arrest you in the Senate.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. We're not talking about that. Although that's pretty badass.
I mean,
But he paid the political price for that, because when he did that, it was illegal, and that's basically why he had to cross the Rubicon, because that was one of the crimes that they were trying to charge him with.
Yep.
But what I'm trying to say is that I'm just I don't know. So he didn't really have the answers to this, and you guys are giving him excuses and saying, well, even if he had the answer, he couldn't implement it. That's not even good.
Well,
enough.
I mean, that was more
because
now
now he doesn't have the answer, and B, even if he had the answer, he couldn't implement it. So what good is it voting for this guy if there's not going to be any real change?
Here's the thing, because I can.
Why are you going to vote somebody if there's not going to be any real change?
Well, here's the thing.
I
wanna. What it is for me, part of it has to do with. Well, first of all, I'm not 100% sure. Like, I'm making educated consideration of all my options. So I'm not going to guarantee at this point I'll vote for him. All I said is I was leaning.
That's what a voter should be doing.
All I said is I'm leaning towards him after this, but I mean, if I end up voting for Valdez or Abbott, that's because I felt it's more reasonable. But what it is for me, I probably won't vote for. I probably will not vote for Abbott. Like, if I vote for anybody besides Tippetts, it's Valdez. But like, you never know, right?
You never know.
But like, I'm willing to be persuaded by new facts and new policies and whatever else. But here's the thing: we have to avoid creating a double standard, because think about it. Democrats and Republicans will say stupid shit all the time, and they get a free pass for it. That when they don't know something, oh, it's no big deal.
They make something up.
Oh, yeah, they'll make something up. When they don't know something, oh, it's no big deal, whatever. Either they'll make it up or people give a free pass.
Good point.
And that the thing is that it's like, yes, I concede that there are problems with Mark Tippetts and his platform. I concede that he is not a perfect candidate, and I concede that there are areas of policy where I disagree with him. But at the same time, I'm willing to give him the same passes that I would give a Democrat or a Republican. That if I'm not going to give anybody passes, then I wouldn't give the Democrat or the Republican passes either. If Mark Tippetts needs to know everything, then so does Valdez and so does Abbott.
Well, what did you want to say something, Nick?
Well, I was going to say that it could just go this way, depending on how well Tippetts does in his run. Now, this kind of reminds me of, I believe it was the election of, what was it? I think it was 1896. 1896 was where, I believe it was a three-way. And
15.
There was this candidate on the Independents who also became a member of the William Jennings Bryan. That is his name. Now, depending on how well it goes, it could go that way, where both the Republicans and the Democrats start adopting some of the independent policies that were implemented. That has happened before in history. So we could see it like that, where you could still see independent policies. It's just from the major parties, since the independent one currently is not accepted as a major party.
And that's
now, I also want to mention something about the police, since we were mentioning that. I guess you could call me a devil's advocate, or maybe a slight defender of the police in this sense, sort of. But you gotta understand, I look at them in the same way that I would look at a doctor. And the reason why I'm gonna say is that they're in a very stressful situation. For a policeman, a lot of the time, crime happens most often at night. It's harder to see your adversary or someone that's committing a crime, because they know they're committing a crime. They're going to either run or defend themselves or attack. Now, in their position, you don't know when they're going to come at you and stab you. You don't know if the guy behind you, some random person, is just going to come after you. If you see a sudden movement, you think it's someone bringing up a gun. In those kind of situations, I can completely understand them if they were to somehow shoot somebody due to their stressed out situation. Now, I completely agree that policemen should be accountable, and I do find the body cam idea a very interesting way to go at it. That way you can prove whether the policeman or policewoman, depending, whether they've done that intentionally to murder in cold blood or strictly because they got scared and thought of it as an act of defense.
Yeah, and I agree, because like, the thing for me that I don't view the body cam as the only option, but I do view it as a good option. That I mean, there are definitely challenges and drawbacks, but when you really think about it, what you said is absolutely true. That the thing is that we live in an era where there are, you know, race difficulties in race relations, where abuse of power by police officers is something that has happened quite a bit. And that sometimes people even retaliate. Sometimes you have false accusations against police officers because people just want to find a way to get a police officer in trouble. And that having that video evidence, that even though because of the angles and stuff, it isn't always as conclusive as we'd like it to be, it's certainly more conclusive than a lot of other types of evidence, and that the ability to actually see what's going on and to see what the person did, because that can make all the difference, right? That if the person was provoking the police officer or pulled out a weapon, then the police officer could reasonably have just shot the person because they were afraid for their life. But if the person was completely compliant with the police officer's demands and they shoot him anyway, that's murder.
But the problem is that there have actually been sort of court cases where the police have been found guilty of tampering the evidence. And Mark Tippetts even said at this town hall that, look, the police are going to have control of where these videos are and how these videos are stored and how these videos are sort of viewed. That is true. So the police are in control. So what I would say is there should be a fundamental right for the individual to also videotape the confrontation. And I don't understand why it's one-sided. Because
why not an independent group?
But look, if you have... Okay, so let's just hypothetical here. Let's have a thought experiment. You have a police officer who is racist. He couldn't graduate high school, couldn't get a college degree, so he figured the best way that he can maintain his power and his standing in the community is go through the police training. He passes the police training. He hates black people. He hates Hispanics. He gets into a situation of where he's frustrated because of something happened to him, and he's just trying to take out his anger, and he takes it out on a poor, defenseless black person who may be jaywalking or, you know, might be doing something, and he takes it to the extreme, pulls his guns out on him, and shoots him, and has control over, you know, why are we going, like, do we expect this person to be like, well, I'm racist, I'm going to shoot this person, but I have a body cam, and I'm not going to tamper with this body cam in any way, shape, or form? You know what I mean? Like, the sort of, the ability to sort of, this officer has complete control over this body cam. And if this police officer, if his police department is also racist, then that just doubles the ineffectiveness of this body cam to actually do what it's supposed to do, and that is shed light on the actual reality of these confrontations.
Well, you can make the body cam so they're not able to be shut off.
But even if he has his body cam, but still, if the police department, which in a lot of cities is still racist, a lot of police chiefs are still racist, then you have this body cam. And it gets, you know, you might have the body cam, and the police chief will say, you know what, well, we don't need this body cam, let's just delete it, or let's just get it lost, or something like that.
But I think
that's what Mark was saying.
The chances, I think the chances of both the officer and the chief being racist are a lot lower than just one or the other being racist.
It depends on the location. It depends on the location.
Well, there's also...
You'd be surprised, Preston.
Well, no, I know there's a lot of risk. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm talking about if you're looking at it comparatively, that if you were to compare the likelihood of them both being racist to only one of them being racist, the chances are a lot lower that they would both be racist.
But the chances that either one of them are racist, and if either one of them has control over the content in any way, shape, or form, then if you have one of them, and then it's still bad.
Yeah. So one philosophical question I want to pose though, because one of the things Mark Tippetts talked about is that self-defense and other rights, like rights precede the Constitution. The Constitution only affirms our rights. I like that. Here's the thing. I am a very strong believer in the Second Amendment. Yep. I am as close as you're gonna get without.
Let's throw it out.
No, listen. I'm as close as you're gonna get and still remain sane to like a Second Amendment, like fundamentalist. Like I believe people should be able to own machine guns.
Naked with guns.
I love guns.
I believe that people should be able to own machine guns and rocket launchers and that kind of stuff. Right?
I want guns.
Now that could be a conversation for a different podcast. But my question is this: is philosophical question. Maybe not a practical question, because from a practical perspective, this would be a bad idea. But in terms of political order and philosophy, that do we have a right to defend ourselves against police officers in the state in the instance where they're abusing their power? Because I'm thinking this, right? That
Of course we
if I and I agree with that.
Yeah.
That'd be my answer. But I'm thinking along these lines that if I see a police officer abusing their power, whether it be maybe breaking into a house without a warrant, or maybe maybe I'm out and about and I have my concealed handgun and I see that there's a black person, they are compliant with everything, the police officer goes and shoot them. Maybe I'm in the I'm in the car with one of my black friends and I see my black friend get shot unprovoked. If I have a concealed handgun on them, I'm of the mindset I'm going to kill that motherfucking cop who just did that because he has committed murder. And now, assuming that I have a reasonable chance of getting away, because in the current legal system with all the biases that exist, I'd probably end up in jail for the rest of my life if I did that. But if we're talking about fundamental and natural rights, that impulse would exist, that if I saw somebody kill another person in cold blood, I'm not sure if morally I would care whether or not they have a uniform on.
Have you seen Training Day?
No, I have not.
Wow. So Training Day is a movie about sort of like a high up police officer who's been in the police sort of force for a long time. He's been there for like 15 years. So he's the one who trains new recruits. While he's retraining these new recruits, he's basically corrupting him and showing him what it truly means to be a police officer. During this movie, they're smoking drugs, they're extorting people, they're having sex with prostitutes, they're tampering evidence. Preston, these police, they're doing all of that. And all of that would fall under what you're saying is when he breaks the law, he no longer is a police officer, he's no longer protecting and serving.
Yeah.
He's a criminal. He's a criminal. And he should be dealt with like if in natural law, if the government can't secure your life and your liberty and your property, then you have the right to do that. So under natural law, basically I think it's like the Lockean law, you have the ability to sort of make that situation right because there are no one else can do it.
Well, precisely that you give up rights in instances where the government is able to protect you, but when the government cannot protect you, you retain your rights.
That's the principle behind all self-defense laws, and basically the principle behind the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
So that exists. It exists in all across the segments of society. In every city, there are cops who are corrupt in every single way. Extortion, prostitution, human trafficking, mobsters, violence, gang activity, dirty cops all across the board. So it would be kind of hard to, if you're going to say that we should be doing this, because there's a lot of cops that you're going to have to go after, and at that point it becomes a vigilante service. And so, it's basically it's gonna be problematic because of the sheer volume.
Well, in some ways, and the thing is too is that you got to think about this. Well, first of all, I fully concede that from a pragmatic perspective, this is a bad idea. Like this is not something
I don't think so. This is not something that you could make pragmatic.
This is not necessarily something that I would by default want to do. But if let's assume that we would. That the thing is it's like I think it was MLK who said this, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it was someone else. But like an unjust law is no law at all.
Yep.
And that the thing is that it's fundamental constraining government power. That one of the core principles of having a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people that protects liberty is that the government is not allowed to exercise undue powers that the people would not be able to do. And that what it is that in a rule of law society, not even law enforcement are above the law. And when you have this kind of situation, you're talking about how many police officers are well armed. If you're talking about it from a racial equality perspective and from a human rights and constitutional rights perspective, that's just more the reason for people to be well armed.
Yeah.
If you get into a situation where you have a bunch of corrupt racist cops who are killing people, which is obviously a lot more extreme than is normally the case, but let's just say that for argument's sake that it does exist, because you're right, they do exist sometimes, that That's why I believe in the right of people to own M16s and AK-47s and AT-4 rocket launchers, because in the event that the government becomes tyrannical and that people's rights are being oppressed and they've gone through whatever kind of measures exist in the legal system to rectify and it hasn't worked, that in instances where unprovoked violence is being used by the government against people, where the government is unilaterally initiating a state of hostility against the citizens that it's supposed to protect, those are the instances in which the people have the right, if not the obligation, to shoot back, return fire.
So basically, if Red Dawn and the Purge had a baby.
Well, yeah, but there's justice here.
I know.
Yeah, it's not total anarchy. Like, basically,
I'm just
if the
making that
police
as
are
an
not
analogy.
abusing their power, then I don't believe in any.
The problem is that you do run into the practical problems that you're talking about. Is that how do you sort of separate the situations where it's truly just to do this and the situations where it's just criminals sort of pushing.
And you have to draw the line somewhere, because you don't want to create a situation where people are allowed to be judge, jury, and execution.
Exactly. And if you're going to err on a side, I think normal people would say you err on the side that gives more precautionary power to the police versus sort of regular everyday people.
And what it is, and it has to do with, because you don't, one of the things, and the reason why I mentioned those pragmatic problems is because we don't want to move towards a society that allows people to be judge, jury, and executioner. That rule of law is important, and that the thing is, like, when I'm talking about this type of stuff, like killing racist police officers, keep in mind, and to any listeners who think I'm a cop hater, like, keep this in mind. This is a last resort. That my idea is that
for evil cops.
My idea is that me picking up my G3 and shooting some police officers is what I do when the legal system has already been exhausted and that there are no remedies. The thing is, if you look at this from a more pragmatic and realistic perspective, it is true that you are going to have to defer to the authority of police officers most of the time, and that even in instances where you don't, you're going to have to take it to the court system, because you don't want to create a situation where it's considered acceptable for people to be judge, jury, and executioner, because that is how rule of law gets undermined, and that is how freedom gets threatened in the long run.
That's what I should have told Mark Tippetts. That is a fundamental right that is reserved by the people, that in certain cases they can serve as the judge, jury, and executioner. In extreme cases, but there are cases that exist where that needs to happen. You remember the conversation that we had, Preston?
If I'm not mistaken,
hold on, Nick. Where I told you, I said, if I gave you the Batman scenario, I said, if you capture Joker and you have Joker in prison, and you could either kill him or you can hold on to him, but if you hold on to him, he's going to escape and kill more people. And if you hold on to him, because like as Batman, you don't kill Joker because you don't believe in killing people. Yeah. And you don't believe in doing anything that's outside of the law. And so you can't kill Joker, so the only thing you can do is give him to the authorities. But when you give him to the authorities, he escapes and he kills more people. And so it keeps happening. So you catch him, you lock him up, he escapes, he kills more people. You catch him, you lock him up, he escapes and kills more people. So at what point are those lives on your hands because you had the ability to prevent it, even though you were a vigilante? So I think that at a certain point, there does become a justification for you to take the action that the securities can't take.
Yeah,
because you're not only protecting yourself, you're protecting the general welfare.
Well, it has to do with natural law, because basically what it is, when you think about Batman, that Batman is able to serve a role that the authorities are incapable of doing. And that's the thing, is that, turning someone into authorities, including maybe like a supervillain in the case of the Joker, for the first time or maybe the first 2 or 3 times is justified. But I think that if you were to have a situation where human life was imminently threatened, like for example, if I were Batman, I would not have the no killing rule. I might not kill most of the time, right? Because I'm a peaceful person. I don't take any. I don't take any pleasure in the idea of having to take a life. That I hope I don't actually have to ever do that. But if I came to the situation where I had no other choice, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Right.
If it came to the situation where killing somebody was what was necessary to save
An
innocent
unnecessary
lives,
evil.
to save innocent lives, like I think about it like this: if I were, I know that he died like a long time ago, but let's just imagine that if Osama bin Laden was like right here or something, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe like the leader of, like to keep it more current events, let's say like the leader of ISIS was here right now, and if I had my gun on me. And they were standing right there, and I knew beyond a reasonable doubt that they had been responsible for the terrorist attacks that killed so many innocent people and that they were going to kill again. You bet I would pull that trigger and blow their motherfucking brains into outer space and do it with a smile on my face because I have saved people from destruction, that I have brought justice to this world. But I also recognize. I also recognize that is a very extreme case, and that most of the things that we deal with are much.
You need gum?
No, I'm fine.
And that most of the things that we deal with are much more ambiguous than that, and that we have to be very careful, because I do believe in natural justice, and that it is
natural
important.
justice, gentlemen.
It is important that we uphold it, but at the
I
same
am Jordan Villanueva.
But at the same-
I am a conscious human being. There's no power outside of me that's going to tell me when I can't defend myself if I feel like I'm in a just position.
No.
I will take the consequences. But if society tells me that I can't do it, then society is wrong. Society is wrong, not me, because I know that I'm acting from a place that is truly just in the way that everyone
But at the
would
same time,
understand
you
what
gotta
just
imagine. That sort of operates under the assumption that you're capable of being unbiased. There could be times where
I am, Preston.
No, there could be
I
times.
am unbiased as it gets.
We as humans are fallible.
What is my bias?
There are times
I have none.
your bias is that you hate Russia. You're very skeptical. That you're very skeptical.
Russia.
You're very skeptical of libertarians, and you're progressive.
Those
are your biases.
I always say they're the smartest. Like they're the ones who actually do the most research behind their.
Now,
Let's
there's
blame
something-
everything on Russia, even when there's no
All right.
evidence.
All right, guys. There's something I want to make
They
sure
killed
about,
JFK.
because mind you, in most cases, what we just talked about, that is considered illegal to go against the established. Well, you could say established order, but basically
That's
the law.
treason.
That would be seen as treason or an attempt to overthrow the government. Again, treason. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there was a law or something that was agreed upon where only when the government acts clearly tyrannical against the populace would the populace have a legal right to overthrow the government and replace it with a new one or reestablish it. I believe that was a law. I don't know why I keep thinking it's in the Constitution, but I'm pretty sure it's not.
I think that's Thomas Jefferson.
I think that was. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at remembering.
Dude, that's
stuff.
exactly what he said in the Declaration of
Yeah.
Independence.
I mean,
There
mind
has
you,
been
both
a
the
long
Declaration
train
of Independence
abuses,
and the
and we
Constitution.
have tried multiple ways to get redresses for our grievances, and all of them have been ignored.
Yeah, and I mean,
it becomes
mind
a
you-
law that is enshrined in the natural order of things. for
Yes,
man to be
mind
able
you,
Yeah.
mind you, both the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, you could even say the Articles of Confederation have major influences from,
Yeah,
like,
well, I
from
think,
the Bible.
I think you know what? One of the
Interesting to go ahead.
two of the really important principles I think here. Hey, can you get me another Coke?
Nope.
Are you
Here,
serious?
have this. It's shit. No, I'm just kidding.
But was it one of the things I was gonna say is that two
I got your Coke right here, buddy.
yeah two
Where's your Coke opener?
it's over on the refrigerator. So one of two of the principles I think are very important when judging this are no, here, let me get it. Hold up, Nick. Keep this going.
Had more specific directions.
Oh man. Oh great. Now I have
Okay.
to try to do this.
So
Okay.
two.
On the side of the refrigerator.
All right, guys. So two of the principles that I see as very important are proportionality and reciprocity. You know it's true though, because basically what it is, like when you mentioned the long train of abuses when we were talking about when you're talking about government, that's similar, because kind of one of the fundamental ideas of a free society is that the government is constrained to things similar to what the people would have the right to do with one another, and What it is that you want to have that reciprocity in the sense that your response to government tyranny or government abuse of power does not exceed, the magnitude of the offense that was against you. Similar to how you would not kill somebody for stealing, $10 from you.
Right.
That you don't want to overthrow the government because they did something that was slightly at variance with how you believe. However, if there is an instance where the government legitimately is being completely tyrannical, where there has been that long train of abuses, then under the proportionality and reciprocity principles, it's a lot easier to justify something that's more extreme, like, say, overthrowing the government or assassinating one of the government's leaders or something like that.
Well, I would say once the government starts sort of overtly disrespecting the Constitution, then it's time to pick up arms. That's the test that we have right there. It's the Constitution.
I'd rather
start
with
the Constitution.
law first.
The Constitution has been subverted a lot of times. It has been subverted in many ways. So we're kind of close to that. We're closer to it than we were.
Yeah, because President Donald Trump's presidency has actually been a prime example. Like, you look at that, he's a constant and perpetual threat to the First Amendment because, anything that he doesn't like, he deems fake news, and he's always trying to shut down the media.
But that's not,
listen.
He's exercising his First
That
Amendment.
is true.
No. Well, here's the thing. I'm talking about using. This is not the only thing. Well, I'm talking about using government power to coerce. Second thing, with the Second Amendment, he supports a bump stock ban. He's in the, that he's sort of an anti-gun person masquerading as a pro-gun person. He has no respect for privacy. He's anti-Fourth Amendment. He is anti-racial equality. That this is probably the most racist president we've had in a long time.
Wait, where?
That
Wait.
Person,
I don't remember that part. Which part
dude,
does it imply that he's like that?
So about like the racism,
the Muslims, or
the Muslim ban. Also, the
ban.
fact that he believed he based the qualifications of federal. No, he said that a federal judge was unqualified because they were Mexican. He also Canada. We have a lot of illegal immigrants from Canada, and he only wants to pay attention to Mexico.
I just wanted to clarify. I just wanted to make sure about this.
Yes.
Because the thing I can understand about the judge. Now, however, the thing about the Muslim ban was that Obama had a version of this a while back, but it was canceled.
Not
the
Muslim ban.
When you imply that all Mexicans are racist,
let me finish. I'm not done yet.
Killers.
I'm not done yet. The thing about Trump with his Muslim ban was that it was for people that came from countries that were clearly in political turmoil.
Except Saudi Arabia, which actually the 9/11 hijackers came from, but he left them off the list because of oil.
But that one's for
Nick,
for
you're supposed to get triggered
reasons.
and go off on meme rants when I say oil.
Okay, but so you know what? I actually agree with you on that. When I looked at the final list, it was from countries that were politically divisive. But if it's not only that, it's that corroborates with what he's done with the Mexicans, with what he's done with black people, with what not sufficiently taking care of Flint, Michigan, or not sufficiently sort of like he has no black people in his cabinet, or he
I mean, he has Ben Carson.
What he's been saying about Mexicans and Latinos, period. I mean, that is just, you can't say that they're all criminals.
The one where he says
they're all
that they're
criminals and
rapists.
they're all rapists. And the fact that you're gonna put Hispanic children in cages. That wouldn't happen to white children in any way, situation.
No, it wouldn't.
Did he specifically do it in cages? Because I remember finding some parts where it
videos
says otherwise, where it was already there to begin with.
Well, I'd actually say, though, I'm going to be completely honest. Even as somebody who dislikes Trump's domestic policy, his foreign policy is another story. There's aspects.
No, but we're not talking about
listen.
We're not talking about that.
I'm just having this is a podcast. Remember, disclaimer.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
mind you,
But
he
here's
is a
the thing.
controversial figure.
But we're talking about the racist
Listen.
nature.
I'm talking in terms.
Can we get to that?
That's what I'm about to say. In terms of the domestic policy, in terms of the racism, even as somebody who opposes Trump on those grounds, one thing I will admit is that with the putting kids in cages and putting people in prison, while Trump is part of the problem, he's not all the problem. And the reason why is because the prison industrial complex and the private prisons profit off of putting immigrants in jail, even in instances where they have not committed a crime. There was actually a guy I was talking to I think it was last year. It was
Right.
Miguel from the debate team who was telling me
Yeah.
about how the system worked. That what they'll do is that even if they don't have any legitimate charges against you, if you're Hispanic and they think you might be an immigrant, they'll arrest you and they'll put you in jail. And even if you
Right.
get out, that there's profit off by the prison company off the time that you were in jail.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I definitely think that Trump is part of the problem.
No, no,
And
no.
as a matter of fact, I'd say he's a
I
big
got- I
part.
got
He's
two
he's
things I
a
gotta
big
say.
he's
I
a
got two
big
things I
part of the
gotta say.
problem, if not the biggest part of the problem. But I
Uh,
think that a lot of the discrimination that we see against Hispanics is systematic. It's not just about Trump.
So I'm taking a sociology class, okay? And discrimination exists. Discrimination is real. Discrimination is a manifestation of prejudice, which is a manifestation of sort of
Uncertainty?
of attitudes and ideas. So you have ideas, you have attitudes, then you have prejudice, then you have discrimination. Discrimination is that final form. Where those things come from is they have to be validated. They have to be validated by your experiences. But one of the most powerful ways that they're validated are by your leaders and by the people who you respect the most. The people that you have the most, ethos for. If those people hold these racist ideologies and these discriminating policies, the chances that it validates your conception that they are valid is going to be high. So that's what he does. So if it was in the status quo, Donald Trump was bringing it to a whole other level of validation. That can't be denied.
Well, and that's why I say he's part of the problem. The reason
not part of the problem. He's making the problem worse.
he is. Well, that's
And
what
so-
that's
and-
exactly
and-
what I'm saying.
But this is getting away from what I was trying to say. We're getting away from what I'm trying to say, President. And that is, when I said subverting these amendments, this is what I meant. Okay, the First Amendment, the right to free speech. I meant him shutting down news networks. Or a president shutting down news networks.
Threatening. He hasn't done it yet, but the fact that he's the fact that those demands that he has,
hasn't done it yet.
that the coercive power behind the government is basically
Yes.
Trump.
Yes,
Even though he
but-
hasn't actually shut down anything, that by his very nature, by his views, and by the amount of power he has, is a threat to the First Amendment.
It's a threat to the First Amendment. Let me finish. But it's not sort of being overtly unconstitutional.
No.
So
not
second,
yet.
what I'm saying, okay, so the gun thing, it might be bump stocks, but those things are in Supreme Court language where those things are sort of up for debate. Whether you believe in it or not, those things are up for debate in the Supreme Court. So if he came up and said, we're taking away all of your guns,
Yay!
that
well,
is
no.
overtly unconstitutional.
I was about to say, yay!
if-
Victimless crimes.
If the government came and said that you cannot be Islamic no more, that is overtly taking away your amendment's rights. And on and on and on. I'm not talking about these blue and white, what do you call
Clear.
it? Blue and gray. I'm talking about clear, unconstitutional acts. When there is a long train of unconstitutional acts, then that's when we have a right to revolution. It's not these, we have to make...
Well, I'm not saying we should
He's
revolt against
taking
Trump.
away bump stocks.
No.
He's saying that media is fake news. I mean, he's actually stopping the media and he's actually taking away the guns. There's a difference.
Well-
And you said it yourself. There can't be a small pretext for large action.
Well, and I'm not necessarily saying that we should revolt against Trump.
Can you get this?
There's some.
Why? What do you want
Look,
to use it for?
For those who are listening in, I'm
Music?
just going to mention this. I
Dude,
don't.
you want music on the
fully
podcast?
At
When
the
it
end,
comes to
like,
foreign
wrap it up.
policy,
Okay.
with Trump on foreign policy, I do find some solid parts about it.
He hasn't
Domestically,
been overtly unconstitutional.
yes, there are issues with him. I'm not going to defend the man for 120%. No. I will look at things objectively, make conclusions based on information that I have obtained, whether through
We
sight,
got way off of Mark
reading,
Tippetts.
or hearing. Well, it just depends from what I know, and I will make conclusions based off of that. Now, I was going to mention that the rhetoric that he says, or even some of the actions he's made, could you consider the possibility that it's all of a political / public attempt? It's a trick that he's trying to give. What I'm trying to say is, in his past, he's a real estate
How hard is
mogul
that gonna be
from New
for
York
somebody
City.
now?
He's also
I
a
got it,
movie,
dude. It's gonna
also
be
a
better
TV
quality.
star. He even showed up in some movies in the past. He knows how to get public opinion
I gotta
to go
fucking
at him,
Russian song.
whether it's positive
The Russian song.
or negative. Do you guys see where I'm trying to come from?
Yes.
You could look at this as, okay, yeah, he has a fairly aggressive or even volatile personality, but you could say that is it's product of his environment.
I would argue that for me, you know, like as somebody who believes in individual rights and who believes in rule of law, you know, because I strongly believe in rule of law. Like that's one of the reasons why, God willing, I'm going to go to law school when I graduate. I strongly believe in rule of law. I think it is one of the greatest things that mankind has. But the thing is, that being said, with Trump,
you need to read about like Kyrgyz.
I would say that Trump is not a threat to democracy, but he is a major threat to rule of law, precisely because of what you were talking about. Trump is a populist. He is somebody. Trump is good at channeling the people's anger. He's good at reflecting the popular views. He's good at being prominent. He's an effective politician. He is good at getting people to support him. Where I see, you know, the democracy aspect of it is not where I see a problem. Trump is legitimately effective at mobilizing people from that perspective. Where I see Trump.
What if the rule of law gets in the way of proper policy?
Well, here's the thing: is that most of the time it doesn't, because when you're defining proper policy,
most of the time.
No, listen. When you're defining proper policy, you can't just think of it from the perspective of white people, as Trump has a tendency to want to do. You have to think of it from everyone's perspective. One of the reasons why we have rule of law is to protect minorities, whether it be people in rural communities, or if you're talking more recently, like with the 14th Amendment, such whether it be racial minorities. One of the reasons why we have the religious with the First Amendment. One of the reasons why we have rule of law is that way minorities are not trampled upon. That way you don't let me finish. No, but the rule of law, when you look at the Constitution, the rule of law was enshrined in the Constitution for that reason. We could have had a pure democratic system. One of the reasons why the founding fathers did not want to do that was precisely because of what I'm talking about.
There's two examples, okay? Examples of sort of like the civil rights struggle in the 1940s and the 1950s. The rule of law stated that they could not be free and equal, that they could not sort of exercise themselves into what we would call just. The law was unjust. So if you followed the rule of law, you would be following an unjust interpretation of reality. That being said, in our way today, the law comes from the legislative process. If the person who was writing the law is someone who is unjust and someone who has interest, moneyed interest, corrupt interest, technically it's the rule of law, but that law has been written through corrupt motives. And so you're following a situation where the rule of law is a rule of corruption. And that, to me, is real. That's a problem. And that's something that we can't just say altruistically that that's something that we should follow blindly.
Well, I'm not saying we should follow.
Where do you come down?
I wouldn't say we should follow it blindly, but I think you're misinterpreting rule of law, because first of all, when you're looking at what Martin Luther King was doing, for example, the Constitution, the United States Constitution, is the law of the land. That is above all other laws. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, all the stuff that was passed to give black people rights, it wasn't violating or changing the law. It was enforcing the law. We had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments guaranteeing that there are rights that are possessed by people other than whites, that we have those rights regardless. The southern states were ignoring those rights through Jim Crow. The southern states and the racist leaders in charge of them were pretending that those constitutional amendments did not exist. The laws that were written in response to what Martin Luther King was doing were simply that was an embodiment of rule of law. They were saying that we are going to write laws that are consistent with the Constitution.
When the Supreme Court said in Brown versus Board of Education that we uphold the principles of a separation of equal facilities, that this is something that is legal under the interpretation of the Constitution. This is something that is okay. It's something that we're fine with. Something that we're going to live with. Something that is
Brown versus Board actually overturned
Plessy versus Ferguson. Ferguson.
Okay,
so the rule of the law, which was interpreted by the Supreme Court, which if you want to bring up the Constitution, is the body who has been entrusted with the task to interpret the Supreme Court, they determined that separate but equal was.
But you see, I think this was my
the law.
That was my point about you misinterpreting what the rule of law was, because one of the reasons why Brown versus Board overturned Plessy versus Ferguson is because Brown versus Board found that the constitutional interpretation of Plessy versus Ferguson was wrong. But let me finish. That is what common law is based off of. That cases are only overturned in instances where it is found that the original decision was wrong. That was the case with Plessy versus Ferguson. Brown versus Board of Education visited the same question and found that the court in the past had analyzed it in the wrong way. And here's what my main point is. That the thing is, when you're talking about rule of law, it's not about blindly following laws necessarily the way they're written. It's about having an equal application of the law and having law that is unbiased and ruling yourself by laws rather than by the arbitrary will of man. That how you write laws and the politics of that is a slightly different issue. Basically what rule of law means is that rather than having arbitrary authority, we're going to have laws that we've agreed upon through the proper processes to govern us, and that even though it's not perfect, it's better than the alternative. It's better than arbitrary.
Couple things. It's better than the alternative. I grant you that. But when you talk about arbitrary, we just see a perfect example of this. Trump can pick a Supreme Court justice who he knows will support certain policies. That's completely arbitrary because he's picking what is going to be accepted. So let's not say that there's no possibility that the rule of law can't be arbitrary. Second, when you talk about Plessy versus Ferguson being overturned by Brown and Board of Education, you had 50 years of following the rule of law that, as you say, was unjust. This law would have been you spending 15 years... Because the Constitution
is above other laws, and that because the Constitution had amendments in it that was saying...
I get that. But let me say this. So there was 50 years where people had to live in a world where the constitutional interpretation of the actual laws were false and wrong and encouraged wrong policy and wrong action. Who's to say that where we are now isn't after like a Plessy versus Ferguson, and we might be living in unjust laws until we get to that Supreme Court decision that overturns what we've been living in. So we could be living in that threshold of here's the way the Supreme Court interpreted it the wrong way, here's the way the Supreme Court interpreted it the right way, and we're living in between that, where we're living in the way that the Supreme Court has deemed it proper, but it is wrong.
Well, that's right.
That's possible.
It's entirely possible. That is entirely possible. And I think the fact that, when you look at Trump's immigration policies and Trump's, and also like one thing I wanted to bring up about Trump's racism, and not because I'm of Puerto Rican descent. My dad's side of the family is Puerto Rican. I think Puerto Rico is a perfect example of how racist Trump is. Yeah. That in Puerto Rico, okay, they're part of the United States. They're United States citizens. There's nothing about Puerto Rico that's like un-American.
Are they really?
They are. Legally, they are. They are Americans by law.
English?
By law. They don't speak English, but remember, the United States has no official language. The Constitution nor any law, we do not have an official language. If English was our official language, maybe it would be different.
Is there any other state that doesn't have English as first language?
Wait, what?
Wait, what do you mean? No, what I mean, no, but I'm talking about by law. Because under a rule of law system, if it's not legally mandated, then it's not an official language. Okay. So here, so basically that Spanish is totally acceptable in the United States because English is not, we don't have any official language. And the thing is that so Puerto Ricans, we don't have an official language. Puerto Ricans they're American citizens living on American territory. And yet, the Trump administration ignored them after the whole Hurricane Maria thing, that they neglected the island, that they did not send nearly as much aid as they did to other places, and that Trump was willing to just completely forget about and disregard them, even though they had been through similar things as many other people did. That is what I think is a testament to the racism. So you're right, in the sense, in terms of interpreting the role of our laws and the role of race within society and the extent of the government's power, it's entirely possible that we could be living under a similar point of that. And I'm not disagreeing with you with that, but that's one of the reasons why constitutional interpretation evolves as court cases go along, because we want to be in line with natural justice, but natural justice is not always obvious, and sometimes it takes longer to figure it out than we would like. And sometimes it takes a court case being overturned in order to find out what it is.
Why wait the 50 years until this court case is overturned? If you're someone who has the power, you can enact that power and you can supersede the Supreme Court, and if you can sort of act. All right, Nick, go ahead.
All right. Now, in terms of Puerto Rico,
I'm just trying to argue for a season.
no, I just want to be sure about this, because you mentioned that in the state that Puerto Rico is in, hasn't it always been like that ever for a long time? It's been like that for decades.
Well, I'm talking about more about action on the government's end, because I think if you're talking about Puerto Rico being poor, you're right. There are internal problems that exist
and I
there.
mean, this isn't
The thing is, I'm not, because here's the thing. Is that I'm talking about more about I'm not talking about things that Trump can't control. I'm talking about things that Trump can control.
Okay.
You know, I don't
understand the difference.
I just want to make sure and clarify.
You know that I don't blame Trump for Puerto Rico's poverty. Like, I know that's not Trump's fault. That existed before Trump came into office. And I think to use Puerto Rico's poverty as a way to criticize Trump would be, to be completely honest, would be quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're talking specifically about the response to Hurricane Maria, that's where things change a lot.
That would make more sense.
Yeah.
Now, for whatever, no matter what, whether you support the man or not, or some other person, the good thing that we can at least believe in on all sides is that at least we have the concept of separation of powers, and that the president, as the executive, has two other parts of the government that can be direct threats to him, or are able to at least limit the potential that he could bring, whether good or bad.
The executive should have the power, the absolute power, to overrule the wrong decisions of the legislative and the Supreme Court.
But how do you know if that one's wrong when the wrong decision could actually be beneficial?
If it is a smart and it is a just.
We all know that you're a totalitarian at heart, Jordan.
Preston, what are you talking about?
I mean, listen, okay, Jordan, every time we've talked about this whole individual liberty, like, we've talked about the Second Amendment before, and you've gotten so anti-gun on me, and now you're talking about the executive power.
I said we should never put me on the camera.
We should never take away the Second Amendment, but we should ban all guns.
No. Literally, Preston is talking fake news, and I'm disappointed in you.
I'm just joking with you, man. And
I said
it's not fake news.
We should never take away AR-15s. I've said that. I've stand up.
No, you have said that we would ban AR-15s under certain circumstances. My point is not about guns. What I'm talking about, Jordan, is that I think.
Well, I'm not anti-gun.
That even though you say that you understand this, I think that in a lot of ways that you do have a tendency to underestimate the amount of damage that a totalitarian or dictatorial government could do. Like that's.
Whoa! In what way am I dictatorial or authoritarian? In what way, Preston? Please tell me.
Well, the fact that when we're debating this stuff, you always prefer government authority compared to mine. Like,
No. See, this is where you're getting me wrong. I specifically said the government. I said this here. The government can never infringe on your constitutional rights.
No, that's not what you said in the past.
But I've said this. I said this here, Preston. And in the past, we might have been talking about a hypothetical thing. What I said about that, I truly believe that. I said we have the right to take up arms against our government if they violate our constitutional rights overtly. I just said that right here.
Okay.
And when I talk about taking away guns, I said if school shootings keep happening, and there are 50 people dying per school shooting, then you have to look at the sort of rights that are being taken away from individuals, because they're not having their Second Amendment rights taken away. They're having all 26 rights taken away when they die. It's not just their Second Amendment right. And if that keeps happening, then taking away an AR-15 might be something that we should look at to see if it would be effective, because I'm about practicality. But you said, well, instead of doing that, let's try the other things first before we do that. And I agreed with you. And I said, okay, so we could have did the common sense, the gun loopholes, the sort of the background checks, the mental health checks. We could have done that second. We could have took away all assault weapons first and did this second. But you convinced me to say let's do the sort of common sense. I say common sense, but that's what the sort of background checks, the loopholes, those things. Do those first, and then if that doesn't work, you take out the next common factor behind all these massive casualties.
Like basically banning AR-15s would be
so, but there's a difference.
There's
a difference, but when you call me authoritarian and dictatorial in front of our audience, I have to clarify that, buddy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just messing around with you, man.
Well,
But what it is, I think the reason why I bring this up is because there have been so many times where you're like, oh, I believe in individual liberty, but
that's not what I said.
What
I said is I am for the dissolution of the Senate, and that the president should have the power.
Authoritarianism.
Obviously,
my point was not to say that you're like that all the time. My point is to say that I caught you in the act again, in the sense that you're talking about the president having all this authority.
Well, there could be that. Then you could go against president because of certain things, and then you guys could end up coming against me because of me, to them, clearly trying to protect Trump for some
reason. But guys,
reason.
I think we need to get back to the original topic. So, because we were talking about Mark Tippetts, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing is,
I love him.
Because I'm
voting for him. You gonna vote for him? You got on Nicholas's T-shirt right now, guys, in real term. Mark Tippetts, Libertarian for Governor. He's been wearing this shirt for 6 hours. How much do you love Mark Tippetts, Nick?
I don't know. He told me something about giving me a hot dog, so with ketchup and cheese. So I just might eat that and then maybe vote.
When Mark Tippetts
no, how dare you?
This is my favorite Hilfiger shirt. Okay.
I would say for me, what it boils down to is this: the two-party system has failed this country. That all the problems that we have right now. The two-party system has tried time and time again to solve them. They have not been able to. Mark Tippetts, one of the things I like about him is that because here's the thing, a lot of the libertarians, there's some crazy libertarians out there. Mark Tippetts was a lot more pragmatic.
Here at this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not really a lot of libertarians, but I'd say maybe the Jordan's a crazy one, the crazy totalitarian. But
Nick is the wild card.
Yeah, but here's what I'm saying. Mark Tippetts was a lot more moderate than a lot of other libertarians, and that the thing is, he's more pragmatic. Like for example, with taxes, that I had brought up taxes when I was asking him questions, and he wasn't up. He wasn't up there saying oh, taxation is theft like so many libertarians do. No, he was like, taxation is a necessary evil. He wanted taxes to be as low as possible, but he didn't believe that taxes need to go away, or that he never said that he wouldn't, that he wouldn't raise taxes if it was necessary. And
one of the taxes that was mentioned was I think it was what was it, property tax?
Well, that's the type of tax that he believed was completely wrong. And I'm going to be completely honest. I agree with him in the sense that that's the one type of tax. I'm in the process. I just got done writing a first draft of a paper about tax policy, and I don't believe that all tax is theft. There are very, very, very few types of tax that are theft. Property tax is one of those types of taxes that are theft.
I can understand
and because it's one of the very few instances of the government actually saying that we're going to take property that already belongs to you, that's not involved in a transaction, and that we're just going to say that's the case. But here's my point, though. Here's what I'm talking about with the pragmatism. The fact that he accepted a role for taxes in society, and that he just wanted tax reform, and that he saw certain types of taxes as theft, notably property tax, but didn't see all taxes theft, that was a moderate stance. That basically he recognized that he recognizes he recognizes that we need to have taxes in order for society to continue to function, but he's still willing to consider reform as to how those taxes are collected.
This was a conversation that I think you and Mark had after the sort of town hall.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't hear this. So he doesn't believe that taxation is theft.
No, he doesn't. So basically, here's what I was talking about. He actually, even in the town hall, because I'm not sure if you picked up on it, but when I had mentioned taxes, I was like, oh, when you're a libertarian, you're not a big fan of taxes. And he was like, he kind of made a face. I'm like, well, but I talked to him afterwards, and the type of tax that Mark Tippetts does not like is property tax. That because he views
agreed on that.
Because here's the thing. Mark Tippetts believes that taxation is a necessary evil. He's not pro tax. He doesn't like the idea of taxes by any means. But what it is, he recognizes that taxes are necessary for government to function. One of the few types of taxes he believes is unacceptable to every extent is property tax, and what it has to do with is the fact that property tax is one of those few instances where the government is actually taking something you already possess forcibly. That with other taxes that like for example with the article I'm writing right now, there's kind of a few premises to it. Like one of them is one of them is that like a taxation needs to be finite in scope. So like for example, what that means is that it needs to be basically based off of a percentage, and that there needs to be an amount that you're paying rather than some unlimited amount over a longer period of time. Property tax is problematic for the fact that it's essentially an internal rent to the government, whereas sales tax or income tax, those are only proportions of what you have, and that you're only paying that tax as it pertains to a certain portion of an economic activity that's taking place. And then one of the other things, for example, consent of the governed, rule of law, that's another premise for taxation. Another one of them, not enforcing inequality. I had talked about how property tax in the current system enforces inequality because of the way that schools are funded. And y'all need to chill out. We can talk about that later. But what it is, kind of the point that I was getting at, like with the school funding equality and all that kind of stuff, is that whether it's not just about how much tax is collected, it's about what type of tax is collected and the way the government does that and the way the government exercises authority.
How it uses
and that
it.
one of the things I liked about Mark Tippetts is the fact that he conceded that taxes are necessary, but nonetheless was willing to take a stand against certain types of taxes that are constitutionally, morally, ethically, politically, legally problematic.
Oh yeah.
And that's very rare to find. Most people, either they support the status quo taxation scheme, or there's some nutcase who just believes all taxation is theft.
So
Mark Tippetts felt in between. He wanted tax reform. He believed that some types of taxation was theft, but he fell very short of actually going all the way and just saying we shouldn't have taxes. He recognizes the necessity for them in society, as I do, and that was one of the reasons why I liked his position on taxation.
So the last thing that let's leave on is because we don't want to leave on something like that that's sort of dry. Let's talk about tax policy for the next 30 minutes. No. Let's not do that. Okay? These listeners, if you've made it this far,
you guys are
made
very
it past the
interesting.
India debate. If you made it all the way past the Mark Tippetts thing and we got a little off the rails, we're back on it, and you are a Wisdom Factory supporter, and you are a superstar in every single way.
Either that or you're an extreme nerd. It's okay. I'm also an extreme nerd.
And you deserve special content to end the show.
That's right,
Guys,
you brain
what
absorber.
sort of special content should we give them? Well, let's talk about something that's pretty cool.
Gonna fiat full communism.
Let's talk about.
No, I'm just kidding. I just.
I'm just messing around, y'all.
And what I think would sort of something that they can connect with. Not these sort of ideas about tax policies that they're marginally going to be affected by, or Indian hegemony, which they're not really going to be affected by.
Well, they could be, but
it would be
only in a
it'd be a long-term issue.
Oh yeah. But what about you as an individual who likes to acquire knowledge and understanding, and you don't know why you do it, or you know why you do it, but whether you know why you do it or you don't know why you do it, it all will serve the same purpose, and that is to make life and society a better place for all of us.
Yep.
And the best way to make the society and the reality that we live in better is to know which politicians that you need to vote for and which policies that they advocate for that you agree with and that you want to see implemented. So Preston, Nicholas, let's talk about why did the Wisdom Factory put on this event for Mark Tippetts?
Well, because what it is that we want people to know their options. That regardless of whether you endorse Mark Tippetts or not, regardless of whether or not you are a libertarian, that we want to make sure that people understand this is an option. That whether you're a libertarian or not, whether you believe in Mark Tippetts' platform or not, one thing that is absolutely undeniable is the fact that libertarian views have been suppressed because we live in a two-party system. And that people, as voters who are going to be deciding who is going to be governor of Texas, have the right to know all their options.
Right.
Mark Tippetts, he's a candidate who is running. He is somebody who you can vote for. You may like him, you may not. You may not. But
Maybe like
regardless, maybe you're on the fence. Maybe you don't know. But whether you like him, whether you don't like him, or whether you're on the fence,
maybe he sucks.
You have the right to know that he is an option that you can choose. You have the right to know that if you want to vote for him, you can.
Yep.
That he is a legitimate option. He's part of a legitimate party. And that if he aligns with your views, and if you like him more than the alternatives, then go ahead and vote for him. And then if you don't like him, then that's someone that you need to remember that you're voting against.
Sometimes, well, I guess he pictures this, like, at least from my understanding, he fits in this picture where sometimes the things that you want may never come up. So sometimes, instead of relying on someone to do it, you go do it yourself. You get yourself up on your bootstraps, get on that figurative horse or whatever you want to call it, pick up that figurative gun, whatever, and do the problem yourself. That sometimes that's just simply the best method, and to me that was the approach that he took, which I would say is honestly one of the best ways of going about it. And like Preston said earlier, he is another option that voters can go with, no matter if he's a Republican, Democrat, or Independent. It's all on you. So, Jordan, do you have anything to say about this?
All right, the final thing that I'm going to say, guys, is, think, no. But what I want to say, guys, is sort of the reason why we put on this event is because, well, I asked myself an important question, guys, right? So, democracy and the theory behind democracy and the reason why Plato did not think democracy was going to work.
It's because of oil.
It's
right,
the
man.
reason why
Definitely
Alexander
oil.
Hamilton was very weary to see full democracy implemented. Why he advocated for more of a monarchical system. Why Jefferson and Madison thought that we need checks against factions. And that is because no one trusts the capability of the voter to make the best possible decision for the general welfare come election time. That's it, gentlemen. That's
Right.
what democracy comes to, whether we can do that or whether we can't.
Washington was one of the few
And-
people that honestly believed that the people could make the
Wa-
proper
and-
decisions.
and
that's why he said no to having political
and that's
parties.
one of the things that Mark Tippetts was talking about was timing, because we needed Washington at that time.
Yep.
If anybody else, we would have been on a total different trajectory. But we had Washington there. So what I'm trying to say is, ladies and gentlemen, we did this event because we wanted to make you, the voter, as close as you can possibly be to becoming an informed voter on the candidates and on their policies and on how those policies affect reality. And with that, I just want to say goodbye. It's been a great time. Preston and Nicholas, thank you for joining us on this Wisdom Factory podcast event. It's been so fun.
It's been a lot of fun, and
Very fun.
that's the thing is that we're doing this. We want wisdom, virtue, and victory. We want to pursue. We want to pursue knowledge for the benefit of mankind, And God bless you. God bless the United States
God
of
bless the
America.
United States
And
of America.
we will be back, shortly. We do these podcasts every now and then. We're gonna have another one in the future. There's a lot of potential podcast topics that we discussed as we were going along. So we will see you next time, and stay tuned to the Wisdom Factory Literary Society to get your dose of wisdom and to consider viewpoints that are unique, that are well informed, and that will revolutionize the way that you view the world, and that will pick your brain and make you consider perspectives you had not before. Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. This was a great politics.
Nick, you did a hell of a job
Yeah.
on this podcast.
Yeah,
Yay.
Nick, like I said, this is his debut. This is the first time that Nick has been on the podcast. That we're getting things done right now. That he's done a great job. A lot of valuable insights, especially about foreign policy. And all right, Wisdom Factory podcast listeners, we will see you next time. Stay tuned to the Wisdom Factory Literary Society.